Hi, my name is Gerhard Gschwandtner and welcome to Selling Power TV. Today we have the pleasure of meeting with Deb Calvert, and she's the author of a book that can help everybody in sales.
When I was first in selling, I went to the public library to try to find a book about how to sell. And the one and only book available was Spin Selling, which was great. It was a wonderful way to get started. But I soon realized that there were other kinds of questions that I was asking, and they didn't fit neatly into those 4 buckets. So I was just curious, and I started writing down those questions, and over the course of the next 20 plus years, I had lots of questions collected from my own sales calls from people that I managed, trained, and eventually across 31 markets, trainers and coaches that I worked with who also were scripting calls for me.
So you're actually, in the book, you're using the word discover, and you spell it out as an acronym. Can you walk us through the first 3 letters?
Sure. Each of the letters does stand for the purpose of asking a question. The first purpose is when you want to gather data, D for data. And this would be anything that's fact-based, no opinion, nothing subjective. It's something that's provable. That would be a question that you ask, a data question, to yield that sort of information coming back to you. The I question is an issue question, and out of the 8, it is the only one that's really about the seller or the seller's company, because it has to do with any time that the customer might have an issue, something that needs to be resolved. And rather than sweeping that under the carpet, it's a wonderful way to open the conversation and help the buyer fully express any concerns that might be there. And then the S is one of my personal favorites. It's one that is very timely given the changes that we're seeing in the world of selling. And it's one that very, very few salespeople ask. It's a solution question. And a solution question is one that you ask to begin brainstorming and eliciting ideas from your buyer to co-collaborate and to co-create what that solution might eventually look like. Even a way to pressure test some of the solutions that you might later bring to the table, but you want to head off any objections so you get that early read on what the buyer might be thinking about a particular solution.
So why is it so difficult for salespeople to frame the right questions? I
think there are a couple of really clear reasons. One of those is that we have many negative messages about questions, and many salespeople then fear asking questions. They think it's like being in a courtroom TV drama where only the prosecuting attorney is asking the question and the witness is hostile. And that's not true at all. Buyers, in fact, love questions. They are delighted by good questions. The other aspect of this, of course, is that not every question is necessarily a good question. And without knowing the purpose, sellers go on fishing expeditions, and they find that asking questions can be sloppy, and they themselves begin to feel a bit out of their element rather than feeling in control with questions. But crafted well and asked with purpose, questions really do put a seller in the buyer's seat. It's just that the seller has to know how to drive.
How do you use your own attitude to influence the buyer's attitude?
Well, first you make sure that your attitude is in check. If your intention is to back a buyer up into a corner, to manipulate them, to ask questions with a gotcha kind of a flavor, the buyer will respond accordingly, and they will become defensive. But if you really want to come alongside your buyer and your intent is to help them and to co-create a solution that makes sense for the buyer, then you have many more opportunities to build trust, to create rapport, and in fact, to create value out of thin air, because that's what very, very good questions do. They make a buyer think, and they help a buyer to see things that they might not otherwise have seen.
What is the ROI on good questioning?
It's huge. You can measure this in a number of different ways. The first one is because we've done buyer interviews, we know that buyers are so much more quick to respond, not just in what we measure and track, but in terms of how they talk about the seller after the sales call. The tagline on the book is, you can become the one seller that buyers actually want to talk to. And that came from more than one buyer saying that the seller was so differentiated by the quality of the connection and the questions that they asked. So that's a soft metric. It's a great ROI, though, to have if you are in a business where connections matter between you and the buyer, which would be anything beyond the most menial of transactions. The connections really count for everything. But then we can also track, because we can say, look, ultimately in any sale, you want to be able to advance that sale all the way to a close. And how quickly are you able to do that? And how much does it cost you to make one sales call, two sales calls, versus drawing something out and having continuances that take months and months? We can easily show, and questions do in many organizations where I've worked, that you're able to accelerate how you get from open and how effectively you do that all the way through to close, because you put an end to all the pendings and you cut out the continuances and you really do advance that sale more quickly. The website is the words people first, both spelled out, and then those letters PS for productivity solutions, peoplefirstps.com. That's the website. The book is also on Amazon.com. It's called Discover Questions, Get You Connected. But if people will take the extra step of coming to the website, People First PS, and they'll drop down the store menu and select books, Gerhard, I've put something special there for people who are seeing this interview, and if they would like to come in and purchase the book through the website, I'll discount the price a couple of dollars and also send a personalized autographed copy if that's of interest.
Well, thank you, Deb, for this great interview. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.